to walk around a little bit. There's some ribbons over here. I believe it's in this area up here. Mary Ann's pointing to them. Grab a ribbon, put it on, and a pin, and grab one of those and put it on. We'll start in about 10 minutes. Take your time, look at the pictures, get some food. Food lines open, get some food, and then we'll get going. Welcome. Welcome, and keep, just going to be informal, so please feel free to go ahead and get food, walk around a little bit, whatever. But we want to get started because we want to have a time to share later on, so we want to make sure we got plenty of time. Welcome, or as Lonnie would say, Muli Wanje. And somebody's supposed to yell out there, oh, yo, Bamba. And yeah, there you go. There you go. So my name is Steve Dooley. I am a member here at Emmanuel Baptist Church in the missions chair and a good friend of Lonnie's, which got me in trouble again. Because Friday night I got a text from our pastor, Emily Holliday, who would love to be here, but tested positive for the flu. And so she's been out of pocket. And so as you can often get in trouble being a friend of Lonnie Turner's, and I think that's why she nabbed me. But you know, to borrow a term, it's good trouble. Because with Lonnie, you can be in good trouble when you try to feed the hungry, help the oppressed, when you try to provide water to the thirsty, housing for the unhoused, health care for the sick, educating children. And that's what he was about. And it's hard to talk about Lonnie without talking about Fran as well, because Lonnie and Fran went together. And to me, they were the true meaning of a power couple. And the kindness and compassion they showed for over 40 years working in the mission field, primarily in Africa, and helping and being kind to those most in need, to the lowest of us. And they did that always on focus during that time. And, you know, I'd like sometimes to just bottle a little bit of the passion that they both had for that. But, you know, that passion, as Lonnie would say, grew out of Greasy Creek in Harlan. And the passion because he knew what it was like to be hungry. He knew what it was like not to have clean water. He knew what it was like to fight to get educated. And he and Fran both. And that meant a lot to them. But we're, and I will tell you that Pastor Emily sent me some notes. And hers are very well, you know, they're nicely put together. Mine are scribbled everywhere. So we're meshing those notes together. I can't promise you what will come out of that, but we'll get through this and celebrate the life of Lonnie Turner during this time. And so I'll ramble a little bit, a lot like Lonnie would do, especially if you gave Lonnie a podium or a platform. Now, a little side note to that, the last trip we were over there in Africa in 2024, Scott Christie in the back remember this. We went to church, in a church there, local church in Livingston, who there were people there that Lonnie knew and friends, relatives of Chella and Nellie and that crew that are over there on the ground working. And so we went to the church, and there were 6 or 7 of us, and they had us come up, you know, set us up front, you know, recognized us during the service, had us, you know, bring greetings. I brought greetings from Emmanuel Baptist. And then the preacher looked at Lonnie and said, would you like to say a few words? Oh, we looked at each other and said, get ready, because here it comes. And but he was very good that day. He did talk for quite a while, but he figured he'd give equal time to the preacher there, and so he eventually did stop. But that's Lonnie for you. Let me say on behalf of the family of Lonnie Turner and the family of faith here at Emmanuel Baptist Church, we welcome you to this gathering to celebrate Lonnie's life. Most of you, I think, know where's Stephen. Stephen, Craig, where are you, Craig, back there? You know Stephen and Craig. If you don't know them, you need to get to know them. And Marianne, where's Marianne? Marianne did all this up here, all these pictures, all this stuff. She put all that together. And if you hadn't had a chance to look at that, please get a chance to look at that later. So we're going to be kind of informal. We're going to honor and celebrate Lonnie. He didn't like funerals, so this is as far from a funeral as we can try to get anyway, if we can. And at Emmanuel, we say that we hope to be a place where we come together to experience and express God's unconditional love. For decades, our connection with Lonnie and Fran allowed us to express God's unconditional love globally, but we also experienced God's unconditional love profoundly through the way they shared their hearts with us. Their lives were clear and constant witnesses to God, whose love is deeper and wider than we could ever imagine, and they were part of our Emmanuel Baptist community. And we just took them in, they took us in, and they lived right over here. They ended up buying a house right over here, and they were part of us. They were Chuck Queen, who our former pastor knows. Lonnie would wander over, and you can't imagine this. They might have some theological discussions, some political discussions during that time. But our church has been active with them, and I can't go without saying that we were introduced to Lonnie and Fran through David Jackson. And David's family is here in the front, and David Jackson, a longtime member here, one we thought the world of, he actually introduced us to Lonnie and Fran. Lonnie and Fran, he got to know them through Anita down, and they were there as students. Plus, I think they did some babysitting, I think, potentially down there too at that time. But they've been part of our Manuel family, and we've been strong supporters of Lonnie and Fran and the work they do there. We help fund in Cotton, and these villages I'm going to name are villages that I've been in. So who all's been to Zambia? Raise your hand if you've been to Zambia. Several of us in here have been to Zambia with that. Hey, how you doing? And been to Zambia and visit that. So some of these villages you'll recognize. We helped put a maternity clinic up in Katambora. We've worked in Manyanya, where we've done educational support and a variety of things there. Namapande, we put a roof on a school in Namapande. Kazangula, we worked on a veterinary clinic over in Kazangula. The Field of Hope, we helped Lonnie develop the Field of Hope. We helped with the buildings there, the meeting center, Mama Turner's library, the raising of the crops there that go on year to year to help feed people there. The island village, if you've been there, there's an island village you go up the river to. And we've helped with bringing food to the island, mealy meal to the island village, and blankets and things of that nature. And then the last time we were over there and worked closely with Dr. Christie over there, we were doing medical care, and that time we went to a village called Kazuni. And if you can imagine, it's probably the poorest village that we've been in over there during that time. But if you haven't been to Africa, as Lonnie would say, are you going to go? Are you going to come to Africa and help us? Because it would meant so much to him when people would come and visit. And it gives you a full meaning of what it is to help those folks over there. There's some scriptures here. I'm going to read a few scriptures that Emily has suggested, scriptures of assurance from John 11:25-26. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. From Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. From Romans 8:38-39, I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Let's have a word of prayer. Our gracious and loving God, we are grateful for your loving and compassionate presence in our lives. We comfort those who are mourn. We thank you today for the opportunity to celebrate Lonnie's life and the influence he had on his family and his many friends throughout the years. And we pray that his memory might be an inspiration to each of us, that we might be people who live to share your love with others. Amen. We're going to have a time of sharing. We are streaming this. We're hoping maybe some folks even in Zambia might be watching, but we're streaming it to folks across whoever happens to come onto our Facebook page. So we're going to have a time of sharing. Invite anybody that wants to share a memory or a celebration of Lonnie and or Fran to come on up to the mic and do that. We'll keep that mic open. This is kind of open mic time. But we ask you to come up here because since we are streaming, The camera's in front. We want to make sure we capture everybody with that. So with that, I'm going to step aside, and you all decide among yourselves who will be the first to get up and share some experience they might have. It's informal, so don't worry about it. We just want to hear your memory or your experience. Otherwise, you got to listen to me. Christy's going to say, one of you, Chuck or Christy, either one. Come on, Scott. Scott, last time I checked, Scott's been over to Zambia almost 20 times or over 20.
First met Lonnie and Fran in 1991 when they were in Lusaka serving with the Foreign Mission Board. The last time was a little over a year ago. Someone in worship this morning, Andrew, mentioned this prayer. When it comes time to write my obituary for the local paper, please do not start with my resume. So I will not start with my resume, nor will I start with Lonnie's. But he ended, start with a miracle. So I want to tell you about a miracle. New Year's Day, 5 years ago, I got an email from Lonnie. He was up in Livingston. Said there's a 14-year-old girl who was down in the river washing clothes, and 7-foot crocodile came up and grabbed her arm, dragged her into the water. She started screaming. Her 15-year-old sister came running down the hill and somehow managed to get her away from the crocodile. They called the ambulance, took 40 minutes to come out from town, 40 minutes back into town to the local hospital. Doctors look at her arm. Both her arm bones were broken, shoulder was pulled out of socket. They said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do." They wrapped it up literally, put her in a splint, and gave her a shot of something, I'm sure it was penicillin, and sent her back home. 3 days later, the pain, and she felt so bad, again, brought her back to the hospital. They said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do except amputate your arm." Lonnie and I corresponded a little bit. He was able to get some funding and some help from some Catholic mission hospital up in capital, Lusaka, and 10-hour bus ride. Girl went up with her mother, stayed at the hospital. They were able to operate on her arm. He sent me pictures. They were, and I'm not a surgeon. I'm a psychiatrist, but I've seen things. Worst breaks I've ever seen. Anyway, they managed to heal her up. Said, "Come back in a month and we'll for a follow-up, see how you're doing." She went back. The fractures were healing okay. Her shoulder was doing better. They started her doing some physical therapy work, and then sent her back home. I went over in May that year, and Lonnie and I stayed in touch. I went over in May that year, and Lonnie took me to see her. She was complaining a little bit of some pain. She had 3 weeping holes in her arm from infection. Might have been osteomyelitis. Didn't know at the time. Didn't have x-rays and stuff out there. We managed to contact a local physician in town, brought her back into town for 5 consecutive days. He gave her injections of penicillin or antibiotic to help treat that infection. She finished school and starting in college over there. That's the miracle. Many others happen like that also with Lonnie and Fran. And I could be up here all day telling stories, things, working with them, doing things. Wanted to share prayer by Henry Nouwen. When you're still young, you want to hold everything in your own hands. But when you grow older and open up your hands in prayer, you're able to let yourself be led without knowing where. You know only that the freedom which God's breath has brought you will lead you to new life, even if the cross is the only sign you can see. I know for Lonnie that was not the only sign he could see, but it certainly was one of them. The healing that he and Fran brought to so many people is just incredible. Thank you.
As Steve mentioned, my relationship with Lonnie and Fran began in the context of the ministry of this congregation. As this congregation came to share and partner with Lonnie and Fran in the work that they were doing. And we'll forever be thankful for David for introducing us to Lonnie, because he had such an influence on our lives. When we first got to know each other, we just clicked. We both grew up in a kind of rigid, strict, fundamentalist, evangelical Christian tradition. And we both grew out of that tradition as well, but still maintained contact within it and worked within it. And I know Lonnie and I had a lot of conversations, and I know that they faced a lot of challenges, not just on the field, but working within the structures and the systems of the organization in which they worked. I mean, think of it this way. Lonnie and Fran knew that and believed that God is the universal God. That God is the God of all people. That God is the God of Christians. He's the God of Muslims. He's the God of Jews. He's the God of Hindus. He's the God of all people. That we are all the daughters and the sons of God. That we're all children of God. Now, not everyone knows that. Not everyone believes it. Not everyone claims it. Not everyone lives into that reality. But that's who we are. And they shared a passion to communicate and to embody in their life and work the unconditional, all-inclusive, magnanimous, extraordinary, generous love, divine love of God, our mother and father. And they shared the passion of Jesus for the poor and the oppressed and the vulnerable and the disadvantaged and the marginalized and the excluded. Jesus was a Jew. He lived and died a Jew. And even though he was pushed to the margins of Judaism by the religious establishment of his day, but Jesus never tried to convert the Gentiles to his Jewish faith. His mission, and Lonnie and Fran embodied that mission so powerfully and so wonderfully. His mission was a mission to the poor and to the vulnerable and to the disadvantaged, to the sick, the mentally, the physically, psychologically sick, to the demonized and to the dehumanized. And Jesus sought to restore their self-worth, sought to restore their self-value by, of course, assuring them of God's love, of God's goodness, God's forgiveness, God's grace, but also giving them a sense of dignity, a sense of self-worth, a sense of self-respect, empowering them to find the resources within themselves to find healing and to become a better human beings. And Jesus often said to those he healed, he said, your faith has healed you. Not my faith, but your faith has healed you. He empowered people. He empowered the poor and the helpless or the disadvantaged to become who they were. And that really is what Lonnie and Fran were all about. They embodied the passion of Jesus, bringing healing to those who were without health care, without clean drinking water, bringing education, empowering people to learn, to grow, to become, to use the resources, whatever resources they had accessible to or available to them. Assuring them of their worth, assuring them of their value. There's giving them meaning, giving them purpose. Empowering women who were often suffered within the patriarchal structures and systems of that culture. And in doing that, they faced a lot of challenges. And not just challenges on the field, which of course there were many, but challenges within the denominational structure and system in which they worked. How do you implement? How do you practice the passion of Jesus? Do what Lonnie and Fran did, and you know their passion for bringing not just relief from their suffering, but empowering them to become more and to help them become to know the advantages of what we have always known and take for granted. I mean, how do you practice that within a structure and within a system that where the leaders tell you, well, your main task is that's not really your main task. Your main task is to convert them to our version of the Christian faith. And that's what they were up against for a lot of years. And how they managed that, and how they worked that, and how they lived within that and made it work is well, it's just an amazing thing, really. And it's a powerful thing, a beautiful thing. And so when Lonnie's story is a lot like my own story. So we Steve mentioned we had a lot of time together, and we talked about politics, we talked about God, we talked about theology, but we also shared our stories because our stories were somewhat similar. And I think sometimes it's kind of like mutual therapy, But I've said all that to say this, that I'm truly grateful to have had the gift of their friendship. They were my inspiration. I would often tell them, you're my heroes. And they were. I don't think I offered a bit of inspiration to Lonnie and Fran, but they certainly offered it to me. They poured themselves out in service to a greater good, to a larger reality, what Jesus called the kingdom of God, and they were models. Really, they were an embodiment, an incarnation of divine love, and that their lives really have impacted me and influenced me, and certainly made me a much better person.
Well, you all deciding who comes up next. Let me read a letter that Emily got from Jim Smith, former director of field ministries at the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and he wanted to be sure and send something. And this is what he says: upon coming to CBF, Fran and Lonnie were assigned to the diplomatic team based in Brussels, Belgium, focusing on diplomats working with the European Union. Their hearts were in Africa, and as soon as CBF expanded to include Africa, they asked to be transferred to Zambia to work with the poor in education, healthcare, and community development. They served in Zambia with CBF until retiring. After retiring, Lonnie and Fran moved back to Zambia to continue work there. Lonnie and Fran came from abject poverty in eastern Kentucky. They met in a foster home in eastern Kentucky for children from families too poor to provide care for all their children. Lonnie was happy with CBF and enjoyed the fellowship of the Transformational Development Team. Those workers had big hearts for the poor around the world. One team member from that team was Paula Settle, who served in eastern Kentucky. Paula's sitting right down here in front, and remember her name often. Lonnie was a voracious reader. Boy, that is true. He always talked about his latest read and recommended various books to others. Lonnie loved Kentucky basketball greatly, although he'd be asking what's wrong with the Cats today. He coached various teams and could hold his own in debating strategies. Lonnie loved his wife, his kids, and grands deeply. His love of lifelong learning was legendary. He and Fran left their mark on CBF, and their memories will continue to live on to bless many for years to come. And that's Jim Smith again, Director of Field Ministries at the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Others? Some of y'all have had experiences, I know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda Hall, involved with Partners in Development, and I wasn't expecting to come up here, so I'm not sure what I'm going to say, except for I met Fran on a plane, and we talked, and I said, oh, I can help you with some website stuff, and so next thing I know, I'm driving to Cincinnati to meet and talk about what else I can do for them, and next thing you know, I'm booking a flight to South Africa and driving across Botswana and spending 6 weeks with them in Zambia, and it was amazing and life-changing. When I arrived in South Africa, I stayed with a friend who was there for a night and then made it to Lonnie and Fran's, and that night I didn't sleep. I had like the covers over my head thinking, what am I doing here? This is insane. But once I got to Fran and Lonnie, after getting scolded for taking a car, paying for someone to drive me there because it was very dangerous apparently, I felt safe. I felt welcome. I felt like I was learning something all the time, getting to see the work that they do, the generosity, the resilience, really kind of deep diving into something I had never imagined happened in the world. Two generous people having so much impact. But I wanted to say about the first night, I arrived in time for dinner, and I found out upon arrival, Lonnie said, well, I want you to know that we're vegetarians. And I thought, oh dear, I'm not going to eat meat for 6 weeks. How am I going to do this? And the next thing I know, he's offering me a glass of wine, and I still laugh about this. He put the glass down, and he poured it, and he poured it, and he poured it till it hit the brim. And I thought, okay, I'll be okay here. So it was a testament to Lonnie's both of their generosity and their welcomeness. They had to have been afraid to invite some stranger from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania into their home as well, and they did. And it was the most life-changing thing that I've ever done. And I learned to be brave. I would get dropped off at very rural schools with the headmaster who would take me into the classrooms, and I'd have to figure out how to survive a day by myself. And so I learned to be resilient when things were challenging, when things were too hot, or that we didn't have food, or all the things that would happen through the 6 weeks that I was there. But I got to witness Lonnie always saying it was Fran's dream that he was making come true, but the two of them making all this happen, and it was incredible and amazing and life-changing. I'll never be the same after seeing such a beautiful place, beautiful people, and two amazing individuals who've made more impact than I've ever seen anyone make in the whole world. So, and Stephen and Craig, thank you for sharing your parents. I love them both very much.
Thanks, Miranda. Good to have you with us. And Lonnie dumped a lot of us off at different places.
Hello, I'm Janice Ebrins. Live in Louisville from Broadway Baptist. We've known a lot of Dooley hooligans throughout the years, and always happy to be able to be here. And it was a neat connection between Lonnie and you guys and Broadway. You all were much more involved, and I've always been jealous and ashamed at the same time about that. And so, this is not any kind of a professional evaluation or anything, but it's one of the things that it comes up all the time in my mind, and I can't ever decide what I really learned exactly. In my mind, I call it the pencil riot. So we, first my mom and I went, and then I don't remember which years really. And then we went back with several of our young women, either high school age or beginning of college. So we were there visiting villages, etc. But one of the times, there's just so much to learn from them. And even when we returned back, it's so hard to process. And I'm sure everyone who's been there, it's such a different world, and you almost can't reconcile anything, and so the pencil riot has always been an example that Lonnie and we wanted to do something else for like all of the kids that would come, at the beloved basketball court, and like, okay, y'all are going to be in charge, and we're like, what, do some basketball, do some kickball, this, that, or the other. And so we really wanted to just do something. Like they didn't have pencils, It's like, how are they supposed? So we kept asking Lonnie and Fran, like, because there was a school supply place we had passed, and they need a pencil. Can we just get them all a pencil? And they'd go, no, that's a bad idea. They're like, we don't think so, So anyway, we kept being pests about it. So finally they were like, if you really want to do that, So anyway, it was one of the days, and I don't know how many kids were out there. It seemed like maybe it wasn't 60 or 70 kids, but I honestly think it was. And our kids were divided up, doing different activities with them, etc. But anyway, so it was nearing time for us to leave, and so we said, okay, here, kids, take these pencils, and we'll give out the pencils. And these children have always been they'd do anything you asked and get in groups. And this is literally, there was a pencil riot, and it was bad. Like, I mean, what happened was, and it makes perfect sense, but I just can't wrap my head around that type of poverty and need. And what happened was we started with the little children. We're like, okay. The little children were tackled, pushed down. The pencils were taken by the other children close, and then the other children. And these are good children. It was just that was such a commodity, and they knew the value if they could get their hands on. And so they ended up with the middle school age. Not all of them, and you can't blame them. Anyway, I've thought about that so many times about what a conduit Lonnie and Fran were for all of us to be able to minister to truly the least of the least in ways I couldn't even understand. It's hard. How do you decide how to minister? And I think they did such a good job at meeting those needs and coming back and trying to explain it to all of us, of just what these situations were. I just got to say one other quick thing. So then we were leaving another time, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, and they were so grateful that we had been out there, and I think we were helping with a latrine or something. I don't remember. Anyway, so the van that they would haul us all around in, we're all headed to the van to go back, and travel to our hotel, etc. And the gentleman comes up and says something about your chicken, and we were like, what? He shuts the back door. So we start driving back. He had put a chicken in the back of the van, a live chicken, out of gratitude. And so there were three girls in the back seat, or 3 or 4 girls in the back seat, and 3 in the middle seat. I don't remember if there was another row and people up front. Well, whatever he had the chicken in, it was some kind of a bag. It got out. And so the girls in the back seat, all of a sudden, this just, and then there's screams, and this chicken is loose in the car, in the van. It was actually hilarious. So our host, our van driver host, had to wrangle the chicken and get it back. There was never a dull moment. To your all's points, you've already said it. Other than disciples that we read about in the Bible, I can't imagine.
I'm the infamous Paula Settle that some of you all have heard about along the way. I told somebody earlier, don't believe everything Lonnie ever said about me. I was with the IMB for almost 10 years in Togo, so I understood the African side of Lonnie. I'm also a graduate of Campbellsville University, of which he was a graduate, and in most recent years we've had some pretty strong discussions about Campbellsville University. But anyway, and then Lonnie and I were part of IMB when we went through our big denominational crisis. So, of course, we had big discussions about that. But anyway, as was stated earlier, I was on his team, and Lonnie and Fran were the oldest members on the team, and they were the only international missionaries on our team. The rest of us at that time were stateside. And so after I left IMB and went to CBF, and I spent 14 years in eastern Kentucky, which was almost as much of an education as going to Africa. But anyway, in our team meetings, we always knew that we were going to hear about Greasy Creek. We always knew about the latest book that he has read. He had read and things from that book. We always knew we were going to hear about basketball and soccer balls that can deflate so that you can get as many as you can in a suitcase. We always knew we were going to hear about basketball uniforms so that the kids could have uniforms for basketball and soccer. And, of course, the clean water, the education. I mean, it was the same story every year, except maybe might have some new stories about those particular subjects. But, of course, all of us loved Lonnie and Fran and always waited every year to see what new stories we were going to hear about. And after they retired, when they were getting ready to retire, rather, I said, now you are going to come back to the States, aren't you? Oh, no, he said, we got to go back to Africa. I said, Lonnie, you have 2 sons. You have a granddaughter. They need you. Oh, no, we're going to go back. So, of course, we know they did. And, I mean, I just know that they've touched so many lives that only heaven knows how many they've touched and will continue to touch. And so I am certainly grateful that I got to spend some time with Lonnie and Fran for about 10 years. And, of course, I'm proud of them that they are Kentuckian. And I really appreciate y'all being here today because Lonnie and Fran would appreciate you being here and listening to the stories and the work that they've done. So thank you for being here.
Who else? Come on up, Michael. Come on up.
I'm Michael Thomas. I'm from South Fork. I remember the Sunday night that we got the shock of our lives. Brother Turner, Lonnie, had a wonderful service. He said, I got some announcements to make. So this is the first of his announcements. Fran and I are going to be missionaries in Africa. Oh, it was a shock to our church, but we was used to it. We were always considered the church that sent them to the seminary. Getting to the seminary then, they were share riding, my father-in-law and him, to the seminary. Brother Lonnie had a old blue car. So one day they were going to McDonald's to eat dinner. And they pull in this McDonald's, and it's right beside a car that was just like his. Prayers were answered. This man was underneath his car. They go in and eat. They come back out. His prayers was answered. He had taken the starter off of Brother Lonnie's car and left. So they get in the car, tried to start it. It won't start. So prayers was answered. That's just one of the many stories that everybody has about Lonnie. And that was one of the earliest ones.
We're taking a great chance with Curtis.
I'm Curtis Smoot, and I'm a member here at Emmanuel, to the chagrin of some. But the first time I met Lonnie, we knew that he and Fran were going to be here that Sunday, and so I was head usher, and I was out here and in the foyer waiting for Sunday school to be over, and he and Fran came in, and there was a few people in there, and Fran was talking to a lady over in the far corner, and Lonnie came down and talked to me, and I don't know how the subject come around. He asked me what I do. I had been retired, and I said, well, I worked for Wild Turkey Distillery for 37 years. Well, when I said that, he started hollering, Franny, Franny, Franny. You could hear him out in the road. And I thought, what's going on? And she started over, and he said, her father and grandfather were bootleggers in Eastern Kentucky. And I got to laughing, and they go over and introduced. And Lonnie and I, we've talked a lot about wild turkey over the years. And he let me know how it was selling in Africa. So that's how I met Lonnie and Fran.
Hi, Chella. Chella is online from Zambia. And so Chella is on the ground there in Zambia with Boyd. And listen, things don't happen over there unless Chella and Boyd make sure they do. All right, Chella, your white mama said she loves you. Come on, who else? Anybody else? Stephen will be the last one, and I'll have some comments after that, but he's going to come up. While he's coming up, my good friend Gary Foreman back there, he and I had an experience over there typical. Lonnie said, how would you like to take a boat ride up to the island? Sounded pretty good, you know. Said, okay, we'll take a boat ride up there. So we go down to he says, it'll be in the morning, be down at we'll come down and we'll go down to what they called the harbor, which was just some inlet there, really, where there weren't any crocodiles at the time. And so what do we go up there, and there's 3 dugout canoes. And so we each had one. I had one. Gary had one. I said, is this yours, Lonnie? He said, oh, I'm not going. So we knew we were in trouble when it was, he also said it was a half hour to the island village. The problem was that was a half hour coming downstream. It was an hour and a half going up. So it was quite an experience. Come on, Stephen.
Thank you all for being here. It means more than you know. I want to say I noticed on there that the High Sheetas are online, and they were colleagues of Mom and Dad in Zambia for several years. Anyway, I do want to, before I begin, I want to read a little excerpt from their good friend, Dad's good friend, Nathan Corbett, that he sent me earlier this morning. And Nathan says, just a word about Lonnie. He was a true brother to me. I will never forget his Eastern Kentucky proverbs, and I still need clarification on one. I will ask that later. But the one that sticks to this day is so true. Life is filled with inconsistencies. Truth. Lonnie, you done good, as we say in the South, for Zambians, for Fran, for your sons. I can still see him driving the truck and drinking his coffee. He was a supportive, solid rock. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks very much. Again, I want to say thank you to Marianne for all the displays and all the good hard work. Thank you, Marianne. It's events like this that Craig and I sometimes, we used when in our younger years, when I was in college, we would be an event, whether it was religious or whether he was at Kiwanis Club or anything like that. And Dad, some of you have described Dad as a celebrity. or larger than life. Yeah, he can be. Dad could be imposing sometimes. So we'd be at a gathering, and it would be Craig and I, or just me, or maybe just Craig, and he would always we would ask him. He would introduce us. We would go around, and he'd work the crowd. And he was good at it. He's really good at it. So we would go around, my brother and I, and we were like, "Oh, you're Lonnie Turner's boy." "Yeah." "Oh, you're Lonnie Turner's son." "Yeah, I'm Lonnie Turner's boy. I'm Lonnie Turner's son." So later, it was like we didn't have our own identity. So finally, I brought it up to Dad one time, and he said, "We're going to stop that." He said, "I'm going to introduce you as Stephen and Craig." And if they asked if we were his sons, then he would verify that. But that it just shows that Dad had a lot of character. Again, I want to say hello to Chayla, the Zambia crew. I know you all that it is very late for you all. They're 7 hours ahead of us, you all. So it's a late hour. Dad. I like to mention what Dad liked. Okay. I already mentioned he didn't like funerals. Dad liked Africa. He loved Zambia. He loved South Africa. Victoria Falls. The wildlife. A good gin and tonic. That's another topic. A good book. Cape Town. I'm going to tell on him a little bit. Dad loved Westerns. And his favorite one was Tombstone. It was the version that had it was Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, and Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. And he loved it for a particular reason. And there's a scene in the movie where Kurt Russell is fighting. If you've seen the movie, he's fighting Ike and the gang, and they got him on the run. And Val Kilmer, he's suffering from tuberculosis, and he's on the river's edge, and he's resting. And the man taking care of him, he says, "Why?" First of all, he says, "Where's Wyatt?" And he goes, "Oh, he's walking on water." And he goes, "Well," he says, "why do you hang out with this guy?" And he goes, "Because he's my friend." And the guy goes, "I've got plenty of friends." And Val Kilmer goes, "I don't." And Dad loved that scene. And I share this because of his personal experience. When he and Mom left the SBC, and you're right, it's hard to mention Dad without, I know this is Dad's time, but it's hard to mention one without the other. They're hand in hand. I share this because when he and Mom left, and then they retired from CBF, Craig and I saw this. They lost a lot of friends. And I asked Dad one time, "You decided to stick it out in Africa." I said, "Dad, why?" He said, his response, "Stephen, almost no one wants to work with the poor, the most marginalized people. It's not glitzy enough for them. It's not glamorous enough. And you all in here are Dad's friend, Mom and Dad's friend. And if Dad called you a friend, you are one. And I want you to know that." Dad believed strongly in education. He believed it was the way out of poverty because he and Mom lived it. Dad tried to impress upon Craig and I a foundation in education. Craig and I have been lucky. We have seen things people would not believe. We have been on top of Table Mountain. We've been in the pyramids of Giza. I've been on the base of Kilimanjaro. I've been in some of the best game reserves in Africa. We've been to Normandy. We've seen some of the finest castles and cathedrals in all of Europe. Mom and Dad truly showed us the world. In that same movie, there is a last scene. And they've defeated Ike and the gang. And Kurt Russell goes to visit Val Kilmer, in the infirmary. He's got TB, as you know. And he begins to play chess with him, I believe. And Doc says to him, he says, Wyatt, go live your life. And he befriends a female friend. He said, take that woman out west and enjoy your life. If you care anything for me, you will leave. Please go. And Val Kilmer, who's Wyatt Earp, gets up and he goes to the door to exit. But before he exits, he turns around to get one last look at Doc. And as he does so, he says, Doc, thanks for everything. And just want to say, Dad, thanks for everything.
I'll read a quick paragraph that Emily wrote just so she doesn't get too mad at me that I tossed all her notes out and ignored them. And she writes so elegantly. And so even as we celebrate a life well lived, we grieve. But as we grieve, remember that every time you speak up for someone you love, you are keeping a piece of Lonnie alive. Remember that every time you share school supplies with a child or coach a youth sports team, you are sharing a piece of Lonnie with others. Every time you speak up to injustice, you are honoring Lonnie's life. I mentioned good trouble, and that's another way you can honor Lonnie, by continuing to get in good trouble. And good trouble is needed in our world. I'm going to close with a prayer that Emily wrote, but I want to tell you, though, and you've probably seen this kind of boils Lonnie's. He kept things down to the base. You know, he's very simple about things. And you can picture Lonnie standing. He's in his cut-off shorts. He's in his T-shirt. And on that T-shirt it says, the answer is flushed toilets. and that fits him, I will tell you that. What great people they were. And we celebrate them. I'm going to close in prayer. Please stick around. Please look at the pictures. Please have some more food. Please visit. If you haven't met Craig or Stephen or Marianne, please do so. And this is a prayer that from Emily. Let's pray. Spirit of life and love, grant us strength, wisdom, and thanksgiving. Give us strength to speak of our lives so that each day yet to come we find more compassion, more understanding, more of the loving kindness that fills our world with joy and laughter. Give us courage to cherish one another so that we use our lives to heal instead of forget. And we give thanks for Lonnie. His memory lives on in the great spirit of life that surrounds us. And his memory, cherished by us, dwells deeply throughout us by the person they were and still are in our hearts. We have celebrated the cycles of life in which we find ourselves, celebrating life at its beginning and its end. Both are always present among us. Loving and compassionate God, remind us to love life as fully as we are able. Remind us to treasure our friends and families as Lonnie treasured his friends and family. And even though we must bid him farewell, the gift of his life is a treasure that cannot be ungiven. We celebrate the life Lonnie lived among us and are confident that now his soul is at rest with you. Carry us from this place in your peace that surpasses all understanding. Amen. Please enjoy, visit, and have some food.